Lurgan, Northern Ireland. The news of her impending motherhood filled Natalie McNally with indescribable joy. Her loved ones, including her parents and boyfriend, eagerly awaited the baby's arrival. However, on a frosty December morning in 2022, the life of this much-desired child tragically ended. In the deep of night, an intruder entered Natalie's home and committed an act of unimaginable cruelty against the young woman. Law enforcement immediately began searching for a suspect, thoroughly investigating the surrounding areas. After some time, they seemed to have picked up the criminal's trail. Shockingly, the perpetrator turned out to be much closer to the McNally family than anyone could have imagined. Natalie McNally, a native of Lurgan in Northern Ireland, was known as a happy and self-sufficient individual. She grew up surrounded by 3 brothers, experiencing a typical childhood under the care of a loving family. Although Lurgan isn't considered the most developed city in Ireland, its proximity to Belfast, just 30 kilometers away, ensured access to everything necessary. With a population of 28,000, Lurgan can hardly be called a small town. However, its residents are exceptionally close-knit. Many describe Lurgan as a place where people trust each other so much that they often don't lock their doors, as crimes are extremely rare here. For decades, the town has been considered an ideal place for young families, contributing to steady population growth. Natalie deeply loved her hometown. She had many loyal friends here whom she could always rely on. Moreover, her loving family was always nearby. Despite warm relationships with colleagues and former classmates, Natalie's closest bond was with her mother. They did almost everything together: shopping, crafting, managing the household, attending local events, and much more. Surprisingly, Natalie and her mother were not just relatives but best friends. At the same time, Natalie's mother characterized her daughter as an exceptionally independent and self-reliant young woman. Despite their close connection, Natalie made it clear that she didn't need financial support from her family. She was used to achieving everything on her own. Friends noted that Natalie was a great animal lover. Several cats lived in her house, but a special place in her heart belonged to a German shepherd named River. Natalie took her everywhere and cared for her as a family member. Natalie's personal life was also going well. She was in a relationship with a young man named Stephen, and their union seemed stronger than ever. Although it's unknown whether they were officially engaged, one could assume that the question of engagement was just a matter of time. Their feelings for each other were deep and sincere, and in a few months, they were expecting the birth of their first child. Unfortunately, a horrible tragedy destroyed all their plans. A few days before Christmas, on December 18, 2022, Natalie, who was 15 weeks pregnant, suddenly disappeared. She stopped responding to calls and messages. A concerned friend decided to visit Natalie to make sure she was okay. He had no idea that he would find himself at a crime scene that would shock the residents of Lurgan to their core. The scene that met Natalie's friend's eyes was so horrifying that it can only be described as brutality and cruelty. Such sights usually leave deep trauma in people's souls. Natalie's parents recall that they had never seen their daughter happier than in the last weeks before her tragic death. She was only 32 years old, with broad prospects ahead of her. Natalie eagerly awaited the moment when she could become a mother. However, the perpetrator had other plans. The identity of the friend who discovered Natalie's body remained unknown. He immediately contacted the police to report what had happened. On December 19th, around 10 p.m., an ambulance crew arrived at Natalie's house. It was later revealed that the crime had been committed the day before the call, and approximately 24 hours had passed from the moment of death to the discovery of the body. Initially, the medics hoped that Natalie could still be saved. However, upon arrival at the scene, it became obvious that any resuscitation attempts would be futile. The doctors pronounced her dead. When reviewing surveillance camera footage taken the night before Natalie's body was discovered, police noticed a suspicious man heading towards the victim's house at around 8:52 p.m. 40 minutes later, the same person appeared on camera again, but moving in the opposite direction. Although the police didn't have recordings directly from Natalie's house, what they saw on the street camera was enough to identify the first suspect. The man was quickly found and detained. This case was of paramount importance to the police. However, to their disappointment, the suspect had a solid alibi. On December 20th, 2022, he was released from custody. Initially, the police stated that the cause of Natalie's death remained unclear. The next day, it was announced that the case was being treated as a murder. Shocking details were revealed. Multiple stab wounds were found on Natalie's body, and her face was so mutilated that even close relatives had difficulty identifying her. The forensic examination showed that Natalie had desperately resisted the attacker until the very end. She had numerous facial bones broken, and according to some reports, a neck fracture was also recorded. The police managed to obtain new surveillance camera footage, and on December 22nd, they detained another suspect. The footage captured a man leaving the presumed crime scene with an object resembling a bag. The police didn't disclose the detainee's name, but they likely had substantial evidence of his possible involvement in the crime. However, this evidence wasn't enough to press charges. The only thing the police revealed was the suspect's age, 32 years old. This fact didn't go unnoticed by the public, who began to speculate about the alleged identity of the perpetrator. For a long time, no new information about the investigation was released. It wasn't until January 5th, 2023, that the police announced they had found the murder weapon. They also made several other intriguing statements. According to their version, Natalie and the attacker were acquainted. They also claimed that Natalie had let her future killer into the house herself, as there were no signs of forced entry. However, investigators weren't sure whether the murder was premeditated or spontaneous. Against this backdrop, law enforcement warned all local women in the area that the killer might still be at large and that they should be extremely cautious. Women were strongly advised to check if their apartment doors were locked and not to go out without accompaniment. On January 13th, another suspect was arrested, but the day after his detention, he, like the others, was released on bail. The investigation had hit another dead end. 2 weeks later, the local police made another statement, appealing to residents for help. After unsuccessfully reviewing all available surveillance camera footage, the police strongly urged citizens to immediately report any suspicious facts or feelings related to that fateful night. However, no one responded to this call. The silence continued until January 31st, 2023. More than a month had passed since the crime when the police finally announced that they had caught the real perpetrator. To the public's surprise, it turned out to be the first suspect whom the police had detained on December 19th, 2022. This time, the investigators acted more decisively and persistently, having new evidence against him. The man was taken to the local police station for a full interrogation. 2 days later, he was officially charged with murder. A few days after that, the police revealed the suspect's name, which came as a real shock to local residents, especially to the McNally family. It turned out to be someone whom everyone loved and respected, the last person anyone could have suspected of such a crime. It was the man who had professed his love for Natalie, her boyfriend, Stephen McCullagh. Let's recall that Stephen was the same person whom the police had detained at the very beginning of the investigation, but released due to an alibi that seemed irrefutable. Stephen had a YouTube channel mainly dedicated to computer games. He particularly enjoyed a series of car games, which he often played while simultaneously streaming on his channel. Being an experienced gamer, Stephen was well versed in computers and knew how to attract an audience. On the night of Natalie's murder, according to Stephen, he was at home playing his favorite game. Moreover, he claimed that he was live streaming on YouTube, watched by about 24 people. If all these people really saw Stephen at home playing a computer game, then it probably was so. This is where Stephen managed to mislead the investigation at the initial stage. To understand how he managed to do this, it's necessary to delve into the technical aspects of game streaming. For online game broadcasts, most professionals use an application called OBS Studio. It stands out for its wide range of streaming functions. One of the key features of the application is the ability to broadcast pre-recorded videos live. This is the function that Stephen used on the day of the murder. He had prepared a 6-hour recording of the stream in advance, which he later played back online for his viewers. While the video was playing, Stephen could have been anywhere, including Natalie's house. The police had good reason to believe this was the case, as the man in the surveillance camera footage strongly resembled Stephen in appearance. Interestingly, when the team of experts working for the local police examined the recording of Stephen's stream and stated that it had undoubtedly been pre-recorded, Stephen eventually admitted this fact. However, he changed his initial testimony, stating that he had spent the whole night at home drinking. When asked about the reasons for using a pre-recorded video, Stephen couldn't give a coherent answer. The events that occurred after the murder are no less interesting. According to law enforcement, in the weeks following Natalie's death, Stephen visited her parents several times. During one such visit, Stephen left Natalie's parents' house, but soon returned after about 45 minutes, claiming he had accidentally left his phone there. In reality, he had left the phone intentionally, with the voice recorder turned on. In this way, Stephen was trying to find out if Natalie's parents suspected him of murdering their daughter. The results of this attempt remained unknown. In addition to these facts, the police stated that they had street surveillance camera footage, clearly showing Stephen heading to one of Lurgan's bus stops located near the crime scene. Moreover, they have a recording of his return home that same night. In fact, investigators managed to fully track Stephen's route on the night of the murder using surveillance cameras. All this leads to a logical question. If Stephen and Natalie were so deeply in love with each other, and Natalie was also pregnant with Stephen's child, why did he need to kill her? Jealousy can be a powerful trigger for anyone, and the case of Stephen McCullagh and Natalie McNally is a vivid confirmation of this. According to the investigation, Stephen was extremely jealous of Natalie. When he learned about her communication with other men, it deeply affected him. According to police information, Stephen discovered that Natalie had been messaging her ex-boyfriend on WhatsApp. A total of 33 messages were exchanged between them. The content of these messages is not disclosed, but one can assume that for Stephen, this became a breaking point. In his eyes, Natalie had crossed a line, and he may have suspected her of infidelity. Regardless of whether his suspicions were justified, this in no way excuses Stephen's actions. From the case materials, it also became known that on the night of the murder, Natalie's phone was unlocked 9 times between 9 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. Investigators are confident that Stephen did this, desperately trying to find confirmation of his suspicions about Natalie's infidelity. Probably what he found in her phone deeply wounded him. Relationships are complex. Regardless of the situation a person finds themselves in, the use of violence against another is unacceptable. One of the most difficult aspects of relationships is realizing that we can't fully control them. We can never be absolutely sure if our partner feels the same way we do. We can only trust and make assumptions based solely on actions. Unfortunately, Stephen mistakenly believed that he had control over their relationship. When he finally realized that this wasn't the case, his world collapsed. According to police data, a few days before the murder, Stephen searched the internet for information about the most brutal ways to kill a person. This suggests that, regardless of what happened on that fateful night, Natalie didn't deserve this. No one deserves such treatment. At the time of the investigation, the presumption of innocence applied to Stephen. This means that he was considered innocent until proven guilty in court. However, given the significant amount of evidence against the suspect, the outcome of the case seemed predetermined. The tragedy of Natalie McNally shocked not only her hometown of Lurgan, but all of Northern Ireland. After her death, marches and vigils were held in her memory, calling for an end to violence against women and girls. Participants in these actions carried placards with inscriptions like "Justice for Natalie" and "She was just at home," and many wore pink or blue clothes in memory of Natalie and her unborn child. Natalie's family, deeply shaken by what happened, appealed to the public to continue providing any information about her death. They opened their home and hearts to the media, politicians, religious leaders, activists, and the general public, seeking justice and trying to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Natalie's suffering has ended, but the consequences of this terrible crime will be felt for a long time. For Stephen, if his guilt is proven, a long period of reckoning for his actions will begin. This story serves as a grim reminder of how jealousy and distrust can lead to irreparable consequences, destroying lives and leaving deep scars in the hearts of people and society as a whole. Thank you for watching this video. Write your opinion in the comments, and also do not forget to put a like if you like this story. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.